Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 22 of the Road to Latin textbook. Specifically, we're going to look at its story, which is called Ludus Puerorum. So this is about the games that the boys are going to be playing in their free time. We're going to learn a little bit about Roman military history along the way. But what it's really about is continuing our look at verb conjugations, right? That's the grammar. So what I always tell you is to get a better sense of this, since we are going to talk about some grammar and things like that, I'd recommend you go to my textbook, take a look. There's things there that will help you with your vocab. So for instance, you can find Quizlets there. You can use them to make, whatever it is you use to practice, Gimkit, Bluekit, whatever it is. You can find them there. You can find English derivatives, just anything to kind of help you along. You'll also find grammar explanations, which, like I just mentioned, we're going to do one at the start of this video just because it's a new chapter. To make sure that you understand what's happening in the chapter story. But if you want the in-depth notes, it's there for you. There's videos, just a bunch of different stuff to help you understand the story. But regardless of how you prep or what you use to prep, whether it's my website or the textbook itself, whatever it is, before you dive into the story, I'd highly recommend that you have the vocab under control. So that should be step one. Make a list if you need to, use my Quizlet if you want, but make sure that you have all these new words down and that you feel comfortable with it, because it's really hard to translate if you don't know what the words mean, right? It doesn't really matter what grammar you know. If you have no clue what the word means, you're at a disadvantage. You're not going to be able to do it. So start with the vocab. Once you feel good with that, go on to the grammar. Again, read through my grammar notes or do whatever you can to try to make sure that you've got it. Because when you read through the story, you're going to see a lot of this grammar in every line, basically. So if you don't know what's happening with the grammar, it might make it tricky for you to be able to read this. Then once you're in that place, you always want to make sure that you're practicing your speaking and your listening skills. You don't want to shut those off. So find a classmate, read the story aloud to them. That way you can work on your pronunciation, your speaking, kind of bring the language to life. And then if they can read it back to you, you're working on your listening skills, which is really important. When you hear this story, you're going to catch a lot of the patterns. You'll start to catch on to the way the verbs sound, right? This is specifically on verb endings and tenses in this chapter, the grammar. So you can hear that. It's something that you won't be able to get if you're just reading the book and translating in your head. You really want to bring it to life a little bit. Don't shut off those modes of learning. You never know. You might be more of an auditory learner, and this will help you through. So regardless, once you're in that place, you feel comfortable, read the story, and that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to read it and go over it to make sure that you're on the right track. Before we do anything, though, like I said, I wanted to give you a quick grammar update or lesson just so you can make sense of the story in case you haven't done it yet. So this story is picking up on something, or this chapter rather, is picking up on something called third IO verbs. Now, this is something that we've kind of hinted at. I think if you've watched my videos, you've seen it, but the book hasn't really explained these yet. So what we've been doing is looking at Latin verbs and trying to organize them. So in terms of grammar, we put them into groups that we call conjugations, and there's 4 of them. So we organize these groups or identify them by looking at the infinitive, which is the second part of a verb. So if the infinitive ends in an ARE, it's what we call first conjugation, the first group. If it's a long ERE, meaning that E has a long mark or a macron over it, it's second conjugation. A short ERE, meaning an E without a macron, is third, and the IRE is fourth, right? This is something we've been doing for a few chapters now, and it's helped us figure out how to do present, imperfect, and future tense, right? There's one extra piece in terms of verbs that you want to know, though. It's sort of like a mini conjugation called third IO. So these third IO verbs are basically a blend between third and fourth conjugation. One way to think about it is they're third conjugation verbs using fourth conjugation endings. So they're this little offshoot of third conjugation. They're kind of between third and fourth. All it means is that they're going to use the vowel I in places you wouldn't expect for third conjugation verbs, but you would expect for fourth, if that makes sense. And I'll show you what I mean. So to identify it, a third IO verb still has an ERE in the infinitive because it is third conjugation. But that first principal part of the verb, which is the first person singular in present tense, is literally going to end in an IO. Normally, it would just be an O. The IO is why we call these third IO verbs. So if you look at the bottom of this slide, you can see mito, mitere. Mitere is third conjugation. It ends in a short ERE, the infinitive. And the first part is mito. It just ends in an O. This is normal third conjugation or third group for verbs. But the verb under it, yakio, yakare, it also is in third conjugation, right? Yakare has a short ERE. But there's something different. The first piece is not yako. So in other words, when you say I throw, you don't say yako, you say yakio. There's something different there. That first piece ends in an IO. That's the red flag that this is what we call a third IO verb. And it's going to do something slightly different when you conjugate it. So let's take a look at the different tenses, right? In present tense, you do the exact same thing for third IOs that you would for any other verb. You go to the infinitive, you drop the RE, you change the E to an I, right? And then that last vowel goes from I to a U. Except here, when you get to that third person plural, you can see it in the note, instead of going to a you, you keep the I there, so it stays as I, you. That's the only difference, right? Otherwise, it looks the exact same as third conjugation, but when you get to the they part, in other words, the third person plural, if you're trying to say they throw, it's not UNT, it's going to be IUNT. Once you have that vowel flip, right, that's literally the difference between a third and a third IO. You're just adding your endings, right, the personal verb endings. If it's active, it's st, must, to, sunt, right? If it's passive, it's the ristur, and down the line. So this is an example of it, right? This is a third IO verb, copio, copere. And this comes from the Road to Latin textbook. It's showing you the active and passive forms. So you have copio, copis, copit, copimus, copitus. That all makes sense. But look at the last one, the third plural. It's not copunt, it's copiunt. That IUNT is the difference between a third and a third IO. It's a very subtle difference, but that IU ending is really something you'd expect more in fourth conjugation. And again, it's because you have a third group or third conjugation verb using fourth conjugation endings. You can see on the passive, same thing. We just swapped out the endings for ristur, but at the last one, the third person plural, you can still see IUNTUR. That's how you can tell. For imperfect tense, same thing. You're going to the infinitive, you're dropping the RE. The difference here is in front of your BA, you want to just make sure that there's an IE there. So on a normal third conjugation verb, it would be an E in front of the BA. With third IO, it's IE in front of the BA. So again, the I is slipping in there where you're not exactly expecting it. So then you add your endings, right? That's all it is. So you just want to make sure that you're putting an I in front of it, or an IE in front of it, is really how you want to think about it. So what do I mean? Well, it looks like this. If we come back to copio, copere, when you go to copere, it's spelled C-A-P-E-R-E. You don't, you drop the R-E and you have cape, C-A-P-E. You don't just add the B-A. That would be capebaum. Instead, you make it I-E in front of the B-A. So it's capeabaum. So if you're looking at this, the I-E in front of the B-A is what's telling you this is a third conjugation, or rather a third IO verb. Okay. If it were normal third conjugation, there would just be an E there. There wouldn't be an I. All right. Same thing is happening on the passive side. You're just using your passive endings, right? Bar, respator, but you have an IE in front of it. That's the red flag that it's third IO. For future tense, remember, because third IO are third conjugation verbs, they're using the A and 5Es, right, for our future infix. So same thing, go to the infinitive, you drop the RE, you get the present stem. When you have the A and 5Es, though, for third IO, you stick an I in front of it. Again, this is the difference. It's not A and 5Es, it's IA, and then IE, IE down the line. The I is showing up. And then you add your endings. Again, same idea, MST or RRISTUR, depending on what voice you're using. So this is what it looks like for future tense. You would have copiam, again, with a normal third conjugation verb like mito, mitore. This would be mitam with just an am. Since it's third IO, it's copiam, IAM. The IA or the IE in front of the ending is telling you this is a third IO verb. That's the only difference. So it's not anything you need to get too crazy about, right? Sometimes it's hard to spot them, but it gets a little tricky if you're really focusing on grammar. And again, for me, I'm more concerned with, can you read and understand it? But I know you might be taking a class where your teacher is like, you need to know how to spell these really well. This is how you can tell, right, what to do when you have a third IO verb, or how to recognize it if you're looking, if you're reading something, how to recognize it in context. So this is something you can practice. Again, I always tell you on Magistrula. But honestly, the more you read, like reading this chapter story, you're going to get a lot of exposure to third IO verbs. The more you read and practice, the more easily you're going to be able to spot these. Okay. But now that you've seen the grammar and you know what the chapter is about, you're ready to read through the story. And again, we'll point these out. You're going to see a lot of third IO verbs as we go. So the story starts like this. You have quotanis, Marcus legatus ab hibernis domum venet. So every year, or yearly, quotanis, Marcus the legate, the lieutenant, right? Lieutenant Marcus, this is the older brother who's in the army, right, or in the military. So Lieutenant Marcus, he comes home, right? Domum venet. Ab hibernis means from his winter quarters. Ab takes the ablative, that's why it's hibernis. So he comes home from his winter quarters, right? He takes like a little break, I guess you'd say. Then you have ad pueros dona fere semper portat. So to the boys, ad pueros, he carries portat, dona, gifts. Dona is from the word donum. It's a neuter noun. That's why the accusative plural is the A. Dona is the neuter accusative plural. He brings gifts. And it's fere semper, so nearly always, right? Almost always he brings gifts. So he likes to come back and he brings things for the little boys, right? His brothers. Then you have Saipe dona sunt arma lignea. So often the gifts, right, the dona, and here's a good example of seeing dona nominative plural versus dona accusative plural. The spelling is the same, but the context here is telling you that you're looking at the subject. The gifts are, right, sunt. So the gifts are arma lignea, wooden weapons. Lignea means wooden, arma or weapons. So he's bringing them little like toy soldier weapons made out of wood is the idea. In hibernis armati non pugnant et magnum est otium. So in winter quarters, right, during the winter, basically, armati, remember that means armed men, soldiers. The soldiers non pugnant, they don't fight. And there is est magnum otium. There's a lot of leisure, right? There's much leisure or great leisure, you might say. If you're in the winter, you're not going to be fighting. What are the soldiers going to do? They're hanging out a little bit. Then you have itaque dona parva libenter faciunt. And so, itaque, faciunt, they make, libenter means like happily or gladly, they gladly make dona parva, little gifts. So the idea is if you're a soldier, you're in winter quarters, you have nothing to do, you make little gifts for your family members, right? Brothers, sisters, whatever it is. Hodie Marcus pueris dona dat. So today, Marcus dat, he's giving. Remember when you have verbs of giving, you give something to someone. So what does he give? Dona, gifts. That's my accusative plural. He gives gifts. Who does he give them to? Pueris, to the boys, right? To his younger brothers. Then it continues. And you have ego galliam accipio publius clama. So I, accipio, here's a third io verb, right? Accipio, accipere is third io. That io is actually first person singular. So Publius shouts, I'm getting, right? Accipio means to receive or to take, right? Accept. So maybe receive works here. He's saying, I'm receiving or I got, or I'm getting a gallium, a helmet, Publius shouts. Then he says, quid tu accipis aule? Accipis is second person singular. It's still a third conjugation verb, present tense. So he says, what are you getting or what are you receiving? Aule, Aulus, right, is his name. This is vocative. So aule means just he's calling Aulus by name. So again, he's saying, what are you getting, right? What are you receiving, Aulus? And then Aulus responds. He says, ego pilum et scutum accipio et Lucius quoque pilum et scutum accipit. Aulus responded. So remember, Lucius and Aulus are the older brothers. Publius and Servius are the younger ones. So the little brother got a helmet. The older one, right, Aulus, he says, I, ego, I, accipio, I'm receiving or I got, or I'm getting, you might say, present tense, a pilum, which is a spear, right? A pilum is like a javelin, and a scutum, a shield. And Lucius, right, Lucius also is receiving, accipit, it's third person singular, is receiving a pilum and scutum, right, a shield and a javelin. Aulus responds. And then he says, cur pila et scuta accipitus, none desideratis Gallias? So I'm assuming this is the younger brother. Publius is saying, why are you receiving, are you getting, again, this is second person plural, accipitus, just present tense. He's saying, why are you getting, you all, meaning both of you, why are you getting pila, this is javelins, neuter plural, et scuta and shields, right? Again, both of these are neuter words. The a here is accusative plural. So he's saying, why are you both getting, you all getting javelins and shields? None means surely. Remember, he's asking a yes or no question, but he's anticipating a yes answer. So he says, surely you desire, you all desire, right? Desideratus, Gallias, helmets. So the little kid has a helmet. He's like, why'd you get those toys? Don't you want a helmet? Right? He's expecting it to be a yes. And again, Publius rogat. So Publius asks. He's like, don't you want this helmet? And then you get the response. You have pila et scuta accipimus quod libenter pugnamus. So he's saying accipimus, we are receiving javelins and shields, pila et scuta, because we are fighting, pugnamus, we are gladly fighting, right? The idea is they're play fighting. So he's like, we're getting swords and shields because we're almost getting ready to join the military, is what he's saying. You have parvi pueri, publi, Gallias accipiunt, sed nos pila et scuta accipimus, Aulus responded. So he says, little boys, right, parvi pueri, little boys, Publius, remember Publius is the vocative, or publi rather is the vocative of Publius. He's talking to him. He says, little boys, Publius, accipiunt. Again, because accipere is a third io verb, there's your third person plural in the present tense. The IUNT is a distinctly third IO ending, right? Third IO and fourth conjugation do this, but that's how you know it's a third IO verb. You can tell by the IUNT. So again, he's saying little boys receive helmets, Publius, but we, right, older boys, we receive javelins, pila, and shields, scuta, Aulus responds. So he's saying, you get the helmets because you're little, but we get the real weapons because we're older. That's what he's getting at. Itaque a Lucio et ab Aulo pila et scuta accipiuntur et a Publio Gallia accipitur. So he's saying, and so pila et scuta, javelins and shields, are received, accipiuntur, it's just passive voice, right? They are received by Lucius and by Aulus. There's your ablative of agent, who receives them. And Galea, helmets, a helmet is received, accipitur, it's singular, by Publius, a Publio. So it's just repeating what you saw, just in passive voice. Then you have Nunc Lucius et Aulus proelium committum. So now Lucius and Aulus, they commence battle, right? They're play fighting. Cornelius et Marcus in horto sedent et ludum spectant. So Cornelius, the dad, and Marcus, the older brother, they sit in horto, in the garden, and spectant, they watch the ludum, the game, meaning the play fight. Aulus in terra stat. So Aulus stands on the ground. Lucius in muro stat. So Lucius stands on the wall, and you can see on the picture to the right, this is the chapter picture, you can see one of them's up on the wall, the other one's on the ground. Lucius de muro pilum in aulum deicit. So Lucius, right, he throws down a pilum, a javelin, from the wall, de muro, right, he's up on the wall, so he throws it from the wall in aulum, into Aulus. So he throws this wooden javelin at him. They're practicing chucking pila at each other. Aulus pilum scuto intercipit et reicit. So Aulus, he intercepts the pilum with his shield, scuto, right? It's saying how he did it. So again, intercipit is just present tense. He intercepted the pilum, or he blocked the javelin with his shield. And reicit means he threw it back. Tum pilum ab aulo jacitur et a Lucio intercipitur et reicitur. Then the pilum is thrown by Aulus, right? In other words, he takes it out and he throws it back, and it is intercepted, again, passive voice, by Lucius, right? And reicitur, and thrown back by Lucius. So in other words, they're sitting here, they're throwing javelins at each other, right? Wooden javelins, they're play fighting. One of them will block it, and then they just keep throwing it back and forth, right? You intercept it and you throw it back, right? They're playing around with the wooden javelin. Seems a little dangerous, but whatever. It's like ancient lawn darts, apparently. Then you have diu pila a pueris jaciuntur intercipiuntur reiciuntur. So for a long time, the pila, the javelins, are thrown, are intercepted or blocked, and they are thrown back by the boys. All of these verbs are third io, jaciuntur, intercipiuntur, reiciuntur, and you can see that iu in front of the ntur. This is just to get you a lot of practice with third io verbs. So it's repeating the same thing you already saw, just passive voice. That's all. So the kids are throwing javelins back and forth. Then you have tandem pueri defessi in subselio sedent. So finally, the tired boys, they sit on like a bench, on benches, or on a seat, right on a bench. And you have a quote here. You have Iaci e basne marce, pila in barbaros, rogat Aulus. So Aulus asks, and he says, Marcus, right, vocative. He says, were you throwing, it almost means like, did you throw, but it's imperfect. Were you throwing pila, javelins, into barbarians? So he's saying, did you ever throw real ones, right? Because he's in the army. Then the response is multa pila iaci ebam, Marcus responded. So Marcus responds, I threw, or I was throwing, iaci ebam. Again, third io verb, and it's showing you the imperfect now. Iaci ebam, i.e. gives it away. So I was throwing multa pila, many javelins. In Germanos et in Gallos iaci ebantur. So he says, into Germans and into Gauls, they were thrown, right? Meaning the javelins were thrown. So he's saying who he threw them at, Germans and Gauls, right? Gives you a sense that his winter quarters were probably up in Gaul somewhere, or on the border of, maybe the Rhine River, Germany and Gaul, somewhere in there is where Marcus is stationed. Then he says, pilum meum a barbaro non semper intercipiebator et reiciebator. So he says, my pila, my javelin, was not always. So intercipiebator means it was intercepted. Non semper means not always. So it was not always intercepted a barbaro, by the barbarian. And reiciebator, it was not always thrown back by the barbarian, which is a little crazy. It's implying that he killed him, right? If they're not blocking and throwing it back, it kind of seems like he's fighting him in battle and killing him, right? But he is a soldier. So he's saying, I threw it. It wasn't always thrown back necessarily. And he says, saipe, right? Often, a barbaro capiebator, often it was taken by the barbarians. So maybe he didn't kill him, but they just keep his pilum. This is an interesting line. We'll talk more about it. A pilum is meant to bend, so I'm not entirely sure why a barbarian would keep it. But still, right, he's saying it was taken. Maybe they're going to take the javelin and try to straighten it out, whatever. I'll show you at the end how a pilum works. But that's the idea. He's saying, yeah, it was often thrown at them, and sometimes they didn't block it and throw it back. Sometimes they kept it, right? It was captured by a barbarian. But again, all these verbs are third io, so you're seeing how they work in passive voice, imperfect tense, right? So you're getting that mass repetition. Then Aulus says, he says, Mox inquit Aulus, Pila and Barbaros yakiam. So soon Aulus says, I will throw, right? Yakiam, third io, it's future tense now. You can tell by the am, right? And notice how there's an I in front of it, third io verb. So I will throw Pila, I will throw javelins in Barbaros, into the barbarians. And he says, None tu quoque Luci Pila yacies. So he says, surely you too, Lucius, will throw, right? You will throw yacies, Pila, javelins. Then the response is, Pila multa yaciemos. We will throw many javelins. Pila barbarorum saipe intercipiemos. So we will intercept often, or we will often intercept the pila, the javelins of barbarians. We're saying we're going to throw them, we're going to block them. Fortasse pila barbarorum capiemos, responded Lucius. So he says, perhaps we will capture the pila, the javelins of barbarians, responds Lucius. Right? He's like, maybe we'll capture them. Then you have this last quote. You have Mox inquit Cornelius. Me filii erant armati. Soon, Cornelius says, the dad, my sons will be soldiers. He's very proud of this. They will be armed men. They will be soldiers. Tum multa pila et in Germanos et in Gallos yaciam. Then they will throw many pila, many javelins, both into Germans and into Gauls. Et is the correlative that means both and. Okay, so this story is just a lot of repetition on third io verbs in all the tenses, and it's about boys playing, right, training to be soldiers. But I wanted to show you at least what they're talking about. This is an image of a Roman soldier, and it's showing you the kind of kit, the gear they'd wear. What he's got in his hand, or what they have in their hands, is the pila. It's a long javelin. But the interesting about, and the scutum is the shield that he's leaning on. The javelin is interesting, the pila, because it was, I believe, made out of lead on the end, which is very soft, kind of bendable metal. And the idea is that if you threw these and hit someone, you'd kill them. But if they block it, which is kind of the point, it would lodge into their shield and bend, so you couldn't pull it out of the shield. And the idea is if we throw these at the front line, now their shield of the enemy is useless. They have to throw it. And then the Roman soldiers would have a second pilum that they would throw. And this one, now the enemy has nothing to block it with. So the pilum scutum idea, it's talking about the basics of what a Roman legionary would carry. I'd recommend, if you're interested in this stuff, look it up. It's not hard to find. You'll learn more about what they're talking about here. But either way, hopefully this story went well, the grammar, everything. If you have any questions at all that you're concerned about, put it in the chat or the comments below. I'm happy to help you. I'll answer anything you have. But otherwise, keep reading it. And again, if you don't get it the first time, do the read and reread method. Read it once, write down any words or phrases you don't know, and then read it again. And the second time, or even the third time you do this, you should be able to read the story without needing a lot of vocab help or having to live in your book looking up grammar issues. So hopefully you're getting close to that point. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, but otherwise, good luck with it.